Well, good morning, everyone. It's fantastic to see so many people joining us from all over the shop. Welcome to Talkwalker's latest webinar. Delighted to welcome you to this UK-focused webinar, of course, relevant globally as well. We'll be exploring the UK's most loved brands, and what hotter topic to talk about at the moment. We'll be understanding how to become a love brand, but also why it's important and how data-driven marketers can drive strategy to help their brand become more loved. I'll be your host for today, joining from the dingiest conference room in London, it appears. My name is Jack Richards. I'm the marketing manager for Northern Europe here at Talkwalker. I've worked in the insight space for a few years now. I'm a chartered manager, member of the PRCA, associate of the Chartered Institute of Marketing, and have previously headed up marketing for a traditional media analysis organization. So this idea of data intelligence, very close to my heart, something I can hopefully provide some interesting insights on. Let's see. But it's not about me. I'm delighted to be joined by two fantastic industry colleagues. The first is actually a client of ours here at Talkwalker. Megan Thompson has 15 years of experience, I don't believe it, in humanizing and operationalizing data for a wide range of business objectives. Half of that time, I'm told, has been spent within the Omnicom network, where Megan is currently head of data and analytics for AMV BBDO. We've clearly decided to choose the client with the hardest name to get out on a webinar. I know that Megan works across a wide range of sectors, global brands, automotive, retail, FMCG. So I have no doubt she's going to have lots of stories and insights to share today. I'm very lucky to have had a sneak peek already, so I'm very excited. And also, it's wonderful to be joined by our partner Hootsuite, represented today by Lisa Vecchio. Lisa is a CIM chartered marketer. I'm working on it. I'm catching up on the chartered manager course, with 15 years as well, leading global marketing programs. She's currently the director of global campaigns and partner marketing at Hootsuite, so driving the strategic direction for Hootsuite, but also thought leadership, demand gen programs, and such like. She's also led marketing and PR brand teams for Expedia Group, Wiley, and some high growth startups. So hopefully, in short, pretty incredible lineup for you today. So as hopefully you're all aware, today we'll of course be revealing the UK's most loved brands. But as I've touched on, we'll also be digging into how they got there and why it matters. Do join in the conversation in two or three different places. You've got the chat to make us feel like we're not just talking to a screen. You've got the Q&A for specific questions we'll get to at the end. But join the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag #BrandLove. Goodness, it feels like I'm on question time talking about that. So what we'll do today, we'll equip you with some case studies to help bring this idea of brand love to life. And as I've said, we'll leave some time for questions at the end. So I reckon we'll just get started. I think an important backdrop to everything we'll be talking about today is to consider this rapidly evolving consumer landscape, particularly post-COVID. Everything has changed. Everything you thought you knew about your consumers has changed. Who they are, where they hang out, media consumption habits, spending habits, the issues that matter most to them, the broader socio-political landscape at the moment. A whole lot has changed in recent years, I think it's fair to say. And that's why, in my view, it's no longer good enough to conduct one-off pieces of research. Your February 2020 focus group, out of date, funnily enough. Client survey, not holistic enough. Biannual pulse survey is not regular enough for a temperature check. So to truly understand your audience, to genuinely close the consumer closeness gap, you've got to have your finger on the pulse with up-to-the-minute data, actionable insights, and by getting close to the real conversations your consumers are having about the things that matter to them. You've got to understand your audience and you've got to become customer-centric. And we know that this idea of customer centricity drives organizational outcomes. It's not just me saying it, but it's so often difficult to pin down exactly what that means. So I thought a good way to start would be to ask both of our panelists, what is customer centricity? Lisa, I'll start with you.
Thanks, Jack. And firstly, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm very excited about this topic and to be with both of you. So when I think about customer centricity, I really think about getting to know your customers inside and out. So it goes beyond just, what's going to make them buy or click, and even, on a superficial level, demographic, firmographic information about your buyer. It's really lifting up under the hood, right? And understanding, the human behavior behind what's going to make them buy, their feelings, their emotions, their fears even. So, when you think about the customer journey, it's not just a one-touch thing. When we talk about customer centricity, it's about every single touch you take and being authentic, and how that authenticity builds trust. And to do that, you have to connect with your customers on a much more emotional level than I think what sometimes a lot of people take for granted. So. Oh, you're still on mute, Jack.
Authenticity. It's only been 2 years into a pandemic. It's fine. So authenticity is something we hear a lot about, particularly moving into the communications space. I'm interested then, Megan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I love that word. I bang on about authenticity all the time. And I absolutely love everything that Lisa was saying there. At AMV, we call it radical empathy. And it's absolutely at the forefront of what we do. It's just really getting under the skin of what do the audiences or the consumers really feel. And I think if your end goal is brand love, you need to try and think about what is that connection that is going to help you to get there. So if you understand the audience, understand what their values are and how they feel, they will have a really great connection with you. And finding that overlap in what you stand for and what they stand for is really the thing that helps you to then make all of the decisions that you need to make. So how do you come to life? How do you show up? Where do you show up? Like, it really gives you the guardrails for that. And I think it's sometimes a little scary for brands to be working on that. Sometimes, because brand love is the end goal, but that's very positive, and the thing that maybe you connect with is negative, you have to be quite brave to go for it. So sometimes it's about empowerment or making people feel a bit of courage, or even like it can be humor. There can be a wide range of emotions, and we try and make sure that we explore all of them with our radical empathy approach. But if you do that correctly, that's really connecting with your consumers, and then hopefully the end result of that, as you say, Jack, is becoming a loved brand.
It's really interesting. Yeah, I think that idea of not necessarily starting with brand love in mind, that not being the objective, but it being a happy outcome of purpose-driven campaigns is something I'm hearing a lot about. So I really want to touch on, it's all well and good me saying that brand love is important, and our industry colleagues here saying that brand love is important, but I think it's important to talk about how it's more than just a vanity exercise. Explaining to colleagues, walking into the C-suite and saying, hey, our brand is a love brand. It doesn't achieve very much in itself. In my view, it's important to triangulate outputs, your comms activity, your marketing activity, your ads activity with outtakes. Right, what do people now think about my brand? How do they feel towards us? And business outcomes, whether that's sales, share price, or whatever. We know it's not just another vanity exercise, because brand love directly correlates to bottom line, those outcomes. 86% of consumers spend more on the brands they love. There's a threefold growth in levels of advocacy, and 3 in 4 consumers change their buying habits for a brand they love. So that's why being a brand love is important, because it's reflective of the bigger picture. It's reflective of moving the dial. So I know that we've obviously got our most loved brands, and something we focused on relentlessly is this idea of customer centricity that we've been speaking about already. I'm hoping that, as if by magic, Lisa, you'll have a slide to talk through an example of a brand you love, which nails that idea of customer centricity.
Of course I do, Jack. Of course. So I picked a brand called Wild. They're a UK startup. They're a subscription-based natural deodorant. And all of their values is centered around sustainability. And so before I even go into sort of campaigns and examples, I just want to talk about the role that sustainability plays in brand love. It's not something we can take for granted anymore. And, there's enough research out there to show that people want to buy from sustainable brands, or at least brands that align to their values. So I chose Wild for that very reason. And I did a bit of research on the founders and their story because I just thought it was absolutely fascinating. And as it goes, if I can interpret it in my own words, is that, they launched this MVP in 2019. And to be fair, it actually fell flat first time out the door. They had some negative feedback that the deodorant didn't actually work. And, if that's your primary value proposition, it's something you probably want to nail on the head the first time, or at least if you're going to start selling it. So they spent a lot of time listening to customers, really understanding, where they were missing the ticket here, because it wasn't just about the product. There were other aspects of their GTM or go-to-market they were getting feedback on. So when they actually relaunched, they not only came out with an incredible product, this beautiful bright color aluminum applicator case, which then has these 100% compostable refills. So already you're kind of reducing single-use plastic, and it really aligns to their values. But they thought beyond that into the customer experience. So one good example is the packaging. It's in the little blue square on the screen. They were told that they had too much packaging, and how is that aligning with their sustainability mission? So when they rethought of their packaging, they actually made it so that it could fit into a letterbox. So this to me, I'm thinking about customer centricity. I'm thinking about the fact that you're always going to be meeting customer expectations with this. You're never going to have a customer who said, oh, I missed my delivery, or now I've got to go to the post office. And already that builds a divide between you and your brand. You're coming home every time you expect your subscription to show up, and it's there, already posted through your letterbox. To layer on top of that, they actually thought about what the experience would be to open this box, this product, which is just deodorant. So they knowing that their audience is digital natives, they ensured that when you're actually experiencing touching this product for the first time, before you even applied it, you're actually creating an experience that's shareable on social. So it's a beautiful unboxing experience. And then that brings me to the third element I wanted to mention, which is their presence on social. If you go to their Instagram, you will see that they've created this influencer or creator campaign where they've partnered with people with a really, really diverse background, people of all walks of life who represent lots of different aspects that anyone can relate to. And so, yes, while the reviews on Trustpilot are now over the moon because people are loving the product, it's more about the comments that you see on their social where people are saying, wow, I can relate to this person. I've never seen representation of myself in a product like this. And I think that's the tipping point of being a practical brand to an emotional brand.
Interesting. We keep coming back when we've had discussions sort of, before putting this together about that idea of invoking emotion and creating a moment. I think that's something we might start to have more of a conversation with as time goes on. Okay, I'll bring in Megan then with your slide that definitely wasn't created before the webinar. What are your miraculous thoughts?
So hard to follow, Lisa, because I love hearing you talk about Wild with so much passion, and it's such an interesting story. I am going to talk a little bit about some work that we're really proud of at BBDO for Essity, who in the UK, the specific menstrual brand I'm going to talk about is Bodyform. And I think probably a lot of people on this webinar today are familiar with the fact that as a category, menstrual care, it really lives up to that example that I was giving a second ago, where they're trying to push a feeling rather than really acknowledge a feeling. So historically, you'll see lots of TV ads of women roller skating and feeling super confident on their period, but they're pushing what they think the emotion should be. And so we came along and we used that radical empathy approach, and we really dug into what do women actually feel? What are the actual emotions? What's happening with menstrual care, with the products, with the category? And we completely disrupted that, and we properly connected with the audience. And kind of flash forward from there, from our starting point, we then started to get into more specifics, and that's what womb stories and also pain stories really represent. So we've got a video that is going to do it way more justice than I could, but I just want to touch on a couple of real specifics that relate to what you were saying, Jack, about proving the value of the approach and proving the value of really connecting with that audience and being customer centric and driving brand love as an end result of that. So the work that we did here, it's won a lot of awards, and I absolutely loved seeing the comment on LinkedIn one day, because it's won a lot of awards and it gets a lot of attention because it's won a lot of awards. And somebody questioned one of our clients one day and said, well, you know, award winning is great, but does it really work? And it does. Like, the proof is right there. You know, this approach, this connecting with consumers in this way does really work. There's, you know, a huge increase in mentions of the brand and the understanding and everything. If you dig into the data underneath that, it's all about the connection. But the market share has gone up as well. You know, we've really proven that there is a direct commercial outcome to thinking and working in this way. But yeah, the video is going to do it way more justice than I could. That really, really shows the kind of thing that we have brought, hopefully, that authenticity to.
Women's experiences are doubted and silenced, creating a never-ending cycle of shame. So we broke the law of silence by asking women how they felt.
Like a chainsaw in my womb. My womb is a bit.
Miscarriage felt like my body betraying me. And then we dared to show these unheard, unseen womb stories, from the pain of endometriosis to orgasmic pleasure, from struggling to have children to never ever wanting them, from the liberation of menopause to the grief of miscarriage. We embraced all the love and all the hate, exploding a cultural bomb, which gave people everywhere the bravery to share their own experiences. And from them, we created more womb stories and dropped them back into culture, fueling even more sharing. And then we used these pain stories to create a new medical tool, the first ever pain dictionary. Living on social and housed in a virtual pain museum, the dictionary and our medical research paper, the Pain Report, provides an alternative to the outdated 1 to 10 pain scale. Written and illustrated by endometriosis sufferers, the dictionary helps women define their own pain metaphorically and helps others recognize theirs, leading to better education and shorter diagnosis times. By finding new ways to listen, we've been able to tell the story society was too ashamed to hear, opening up millions of conversations about
I just want to add one final point on that, which is sometimes as a brand, it's easy to do some of this digging, but then just mirror back what you're seeing. But what we've really tried to do at AMV is then live what we say. So, you know, creating the pain dictionary, like going those extra steps to really connect with people and not just mirror the emotions that they're feeling, but give them also the forum to continue to raise and relate to us and connect to us, you know, keep that cycle going of connecting with the brand and giving people that voice.
Thank you. Those examples from both of you are fab. And conveniently, they lead nicely into what I want to talk about, which is always good. So we've had a question come in from Scott, so I'll answer it live. What is brand love? It's a very good question. And I think the reason I wanted to have those couple of examples first is because they embody a lot of the characteristics of a loved brand, and you can understand the way they've achieved that through the case studies there. So our benchmarking methodology doesn't just rely on one data point, such as sentiment, for instance, or heaven forbid, a volume metric. What we've done is triangulated data to give organizations a fuller understanding of what they need to do to become a love brand, but also to help focus strategy on the things and the areas that matter. So very briefly, and I would encourage you to download the Brand Love report to read it in more detail. Brand love can be measured by looking at a passion score, which you can see there brings in keyword analysis. It looks at images. It understands emoji reactions to posts, a customer satisfaction score, which brings in third-party data from review sites, for instance, and a trust score, which again looks particularly at emoji and image analysis to look at the broader context of your brand mentions. So we're really, like I say, going beyond quantitative analysis to get into the qualitative data and understand, what is it that your customers are not just thinking but feeling, as we keep coming back to. And that's exactly what we did. So we used our own platform, Talkwalker, to determine the world's and the UK's most loved brands. We started with 1,500 brands across 20 industries in 8 markets and analysed 2.6 billion conversations. And we ended up with our top 10. So here they are. What I'm not going to do is a sort of UK top 40 Capital Radio style reverse order. You can see them there. If you've got any questions about them specifically, feel free to pop them in the Q&A or tweet using hashtag brand love. What I do want to do though is acknowledge it's not a usual top 10. Megan, what are your thoughts about this ranking? Which brands are you most surprised to see here?
I love this this top 10, and I think particularly in my role in a data capacity, the thing that I really like about the trust score as well, and what's led to this top 10 is the brand love score, is the element of trust that's in there, because there's a lot of FMCG brands in here, and they are, from my experience of working with them, all really focused on trying to capture first-party data and trying to build those more direct relationships with their consumers. And what this says to me is that they feel like maybe they're a little bit more behind than they are. They've got this great foundation. They've got a lot of brand love, and that's so central to that journey of capturing and using data and building those relationships. So I think that's quite surprising compared to the way I think a lot of these brands would maybe talk about themselves and the journey that they're on.
Yeah, I agree. Lisa, have you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm acknowledging the same, that it's not a typical list, but I'm not surprised by some aspects of it, thinking about where we've just come from, 2 years in a pandemic, a lot of doom and gloom. So you see the majority of it here around self-care. And so in a period of negativity, or the world's not so great outside, there's a lot of investment in me. And not me, but I think everyone as an individual being like, hey, now it's time for some me time. So I'm seeing that there with the self-care brands, but also I love, Lego number 1, Hasbro number 10. And I just think, well, is that mom and dad, working from home, actually spending that quality time with the kids? Is that why we're seeing more love for things like this, which is more family oriented? So it's fascinating. It really is.
When I spoke to one of our colleagues at Talkwalker, one of the Talkwalker brands, Discover AI, the word softness kept coming up. This feeling of, sort of closeness, nostalgia, comfort. And I think that really lends itself to what you're talking about, Lisa, around this emergence from the pandemic and having a different sense of what matters, I guess. Okay, so what I'll do next, rather than going through all 10, I've basically selfishly picked out my 3 favorite examples, which I think are relatively interesting. So we'll start with this one. For parents on watching us today, I think it's fair to say, when it comes to your little princess or prince, only the best is good enough. And when it comes to Lego, it shows. Yes, Lego topped the UK list, but it's also important to mention it also featured in the list for Italy, Germany, Austria, Switzerland. Of course, each of these places are different. They've also got their own cultural nuances, but in my opinion, there's a common thread that makes Lego a love brand. The first is that it's known for its sort of partnerships and collaborations with other brands. you think Star Wars, Harry Potter, Assassin's Creed and such like. This year, they teamed up with McLaren. They built a replica of the racing team's Formula One car. They maybe should have done it in 2020 when people had a bit more time on their hands to do that sort of stuff. But McLaren tweeted the collab. It generated 36,000 engagements from memory. It became the third most engaged post amongst all Lego mentions in the UK. So they're reaching a different audience, a newer audience. They're bringing in, potentially new customers through that route. But as much as brands love Lego, I think the second point is that customers love them more, and kids as well as adults. So you'll see there next to the Twitter icons, the post of what I'm reliably informed is called an AFOL, an adult fan of Lego, buying Lego flowers for his wife. That earned over 36,500 engagements on Twitter. In fact, if you look at hashtag AFOL, it's one of the most prominent hashtags when it comes to Lego. And it's really about, from where I am, understanding your audience, and understanding the different approaches for different audiences. And I guess that also leads to remembering that in large part, the person you're engaging with through your marketing, your comms, your advertising isn't always the end consumer. So yeah, we've spoken about adult fans of Lego and not remembering that subset of your customer base. But if you think about the children who use Lego around the world, the individual making the purchasing decision is more often than not a parent, a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle. And these are the people that Lego do well at communicating with. They build a sense of nostalgia, like I've touched on, but also a sense of community, which with it, I think there comes an undertone of trust and builds that general passion around the brand, because you've got that ongoing sense of community and nostalgia, as I touched on. So I think that's a really good example of understanding your audience and not just lumping them in together as one audience. And I'm sure, Megan, that's something that you guys think about a lot. Have you got any thoughts on Lego?
Yeah, absolutely. And if anybody from Lego or any of our top 10 brands are on the line, congratulations. And please feel free to correct me for what I'm about to say, but definitely the Lego example and the different audiences involved really makes me think of something that I often talk to my team and previous teams about, which is you can't just use tools like Talkwalker and put in the brand name and expect it to spit out some insight for you. That's not how insight works, and that's not how you really get valuable learnings. So I think this is a great example where you've got these different audiences of really taking the time to understand what are some of the associations with different keywords? How do you understand the language that different types of audiences are using in different spaces on the internet? Where do these communities build up? Like really just getting to grips with picking apart that data, like consistently going deeper, picking it apart, like finding those connections and thinking about what they mean. And yeah, as I say, congratulations to Lego, because whether you've done it my way or you've done it a different way, there's obviously a lot of work that's gone into creating a brand that is so resonant with so many people.
I have no doubt that it's all data driven and
I hope so.
So I'm going to move on. I'm really conscious that there are questions coming in, so I'm going to move on to our next brand. I've chosen Nando's, and I've put on there, we all love a cheeky Nando's. That's a phrase that's almost sewn into the fabric of British culture now. And there are a couple of points here from where I'm sitting. Again, if we look at that sort of a word cloud again, A-level and GCSE students back in August were rewarded for their hard work on results day, not only by, fingers crossed, their success, but also with free food. And anyone who has or knows a teenager knows that that is a good thing. So they offered students complimentary meals, and you can see that the gesture was appreciated on social media. Amongst the most prominent themes around Nando's was free food and free chicken, which pushed the sentiment to 25% positive. What I think, what does that mean? They know who their audience is, they recognize the moments that matter, and they become part of them. I imagine, and I hope that these exam leavers will remember their results day for the rest of their lives, hopefully for better reasons than mine. And they'll remember Nando's as part of that. They've become a moment within a very special time. And I think that really leads into the second point, that Nando's is a great example of a people-first, customer-centric brand. It understands its audience and it connects with them. Another way they do that is through popular culture. I'm sure some of you will have heard of the Nando's Black Card, for instance. I think Nando's connects to us in a number of different ways through popular culture. So I think music, you can see Example and Ed Sheeran there. They did a sort of an off-the-record type ad before TikTok was a thing, all about Nando's. They also do it through social with TikTok, which is of course on the rise, and I want to come back to that. But they also do it through brand advocacy. So yes, you can see Ed Sheeran, an Example, and I can confirm that they do have Nando's Black Card. So if you want free chicken, those are the people to tap up. But also, if you look at who else has a Nando's Black Card, a quick search on Google has shown me that David Beckham, Greg James, the Radio 1 presenter, Pixie Lott. So, you know, not just singers, songwriters, they're accessing a wider, I guess, subset of the population through different influencers, as it are. And these are people that the population can relate to in different ways and will be consuming through their media. These people, depending on who they are, their media consumption habits, their interests, the topics they're interested in. So all of this feeds back and sort of relates back to this idea of customer centricity, understanding their audience and getting closer to them. So a question for Hootsuite, for you, Lisa. As I said, we saw a lot of love shared on TikTok. Is that a common phenomenon you've seen on social networks?
Come on, with 1 billion users, right? Like, we've never seen growth on any other network than we've seen since, you know, that we've just experienced on TikTok. So we're only going to see more of it. But if we talk about Nando specifically, I think you hit the nail on the head. They know exactly who their audience is. It's Gen Z. Yeah, they speak to that audience directly. And they're able to build a community that, you know, across social, that's allowed them to have a reach beyond, I think, traditional advertising methods. So I think gone are the days where you need big budgets to spend on TV and out-of-home billboards. They have their place, of course. But if you're actually understanding, going back to the beginning of the conversation about customer centricity, and to your point, Amanda, about being brave, brave brands are trying things on TikTok, and they're experimenting in new ways. And so I think we definitely have to give kudos to Nando's for what they're doing. But I can appreciate people on the call are thinking, well, we're not Nando's, we're not that big, we don't necessarily have this massive you know, young audience in the same way. So like, do I need to be playing in this space? And, you know, at Hootsuite, we get asked that question a lot. It's a fair question. You know, we can't just jump on every trend that comes, but I think it's no longer a trend. It's part of the way that people want to interact with brands. So I would say that if it aligns to your business goals, and if it's where your audience is, then definitely give it a try. You know, you can test and you can learn from those tests. And, you know, it's not just B2C brands that are doing it. You've got amazing B2B brands that are doing that as well. And we'll touch on that later. So I want to share with you guys an interesting stat from TikTok, because what I'm learning is that TikTok users are 2.4 times more likely than any other social platform to create a post and tag a brand after buying a product. And to add to that, they're twice as likely to comment or DM a brand after buying a product. So if you think about that for a minute, you've got people who are consuming something or buying something or interacting with a brand, having a memorable brand moment, so much delight that they're going to proactively go on TikTok and tell that brand about their experience. We haven't experienced anything like that on any other network. And I think the power of that we're really going to start to see this shift. We're really seeing this intersection of entertainment and commerce or shopping collide with all of the community elements that, you know, brands are hoping to achieve by being on TikTok. So we're definitely moving from a sphere of just, you know, TikTok for brand awareness to connecting the top of the funnel to the bottom of the funnel as well. I'm
loving those stats. It's enough for me to create the Talkwalker TikTok thing. I love that. And I'm scrolling through the chat, and David Hartley, hi David, has said that the Nando skank was how I first heard about Nando's. So it shows that sort of, you know, audience driven, customer centric, authentic, genuine approach to marketing is working for Nando's. I think the other example I think of when it comes to TikTok, I must admit I'm not doing TikTok dances in the garden. That's not quite my vibe, as much as I wish I was cool enough to do that. M&S and M&S Brentwood specifically, M&S have stepped away from the, I guess, the corporate brand guardian model, and they've handed over the keys to their brand to their staff. They have allowed, you know, Janet, Dave, Mike, Sally, whoever, to lead from the front, do fun TikTok dances. These are the people that you see, that you interact with. You don't interact with me as the marketing guy. You interact with these people that you see in store, and that authenticity really comes through for me. That's another example that I love. Awesome. Have we got anything else to add on TikTok from any of our panelists before I move on?
No, I just love the Brentwood example. I just think it's like, this is where UGC comes into play, and you actually have real people, real users representing your brand in a way that, you know, we can't always put, you know, big brother corporate brand on everything. We have to let the brand speak for itself through its users, and it's very cool.
And I guess from a marketing perspective, it comes back to what you're saying about trying, and you can try and fail. And the things that don't pick up traction, nobody knows. It's fine, and you can learn and
learn from it. Yeah,
absolutely.
Absolutely.
So I love that, and that might kick me into action in terms of TikTok. Cool. My final example from the UK top 10 is L'Oreal. And what they do really well is they recognize or they promote the idea that beauty is about more than looking good, but feeling good too. I feel as though they embody this in the way they advertise. Talkwalker has shown me that when it comes to their Twitter posts, almost 95% of those have a people focus, which is really interesting. Not product, people. So again, it's people first. They also sort of employ a range of ambassadors. Kate Winslet is one, Helen Mirren is another. So as you can see, some sort of more successful than others. Who Helen Mirren has sort of said there that it probably isn't very good, and I'm sure we'll touch on that. But both of these women, you know, seem to be relatable, perhaps even aspirational, and to me, that approach of people over product, it builds trust. That's obviously a crucial element of the methodology, the brand love methodology we were talking about. I just love it. I love that, moving away from product, putting people at the center, being relatable, being aspirational, and yeah, moving beyond sort of the looking good but feeling good too. Megan, what do you reckon about that?
I mean, for both of these, L'Oreal and Fernando's, the thing that I really love is that authenticity. And we get asked so often by brands, how do we become part of culture? How do we get in there? And I think it really relates to that exact same question for, should we get on TikTok? You know, a lot of our brands really want to do these things. And I think if you use those guardrails, if you have a brand that you kind of know yourselves inside and out, it really helps you to make good decisions about how you do it, because you are doing it authentically. So it's, you know, that Nando's example, I love the the exam day free food. Like, they know the audience, they know what's important to them, so it's easy to get involved in a really authentic way and to become part of culture, because you've done that due diligence of what is the overlap, what do we stand for, what do the audience stand for, like what can we really connect on. And I think L'Oreal have, you know, always been a brand that does that really, really well. They stand up for making women feel good, as you say. You know, that's been the line all along. And yeah, I think that they are a really strong, authentic brand. And
I must confess, you know, my opinion as someone who doesn't use L'Oreal's product was, my goodness, Helen Mirren, what a mess up that is. But Lisa, I know you've got a different opinion.
I love it. I saw this, I read the article, and she's like, you know, it probably doesn't work, but you think about L'Oreal is about what you feel, because you're worth it. You know, it's completely connected to their tagline. And she's like, you know what, if it doesn't work, I'd rather take the placebo effect and feel good and assume it's working. You know, even if it doesn't, then cake on 5 layers is something that's meant to work and just feel like crap after it. Like, she's being honest, and that's okay. She's still a brand ambassador for a reason, right? Because it does make her feel good. So I don't think we have to look at that quote, and I know it was a bit of a slap on the wrist as a doom and gloom. I actually think it's the perfect response to what the brand values and message say.
Maybe I'll have to try some
Maybe you just need to put some moisturizer on and you'll feel the feeling that Helen described.
We'll give it a go. We'll give it a go. I mean, an example I always come back to on the sort of brand ambassador influencer approach is something that I heard about through Scott Guthrie, who I always describe as the influencer's influencer. He's fantastic. He talks about the example from the UK government. I think the guys at UK GovComs do brilliantly, but there's an example of during at the start of COVID, when they were trying to change human behavior, which is not just in terms of changing buying habits like many of us will do. It's changing the way people go about their lives, getting them to wear masks, getting them to isolate, getting them to stay at home. So in March 2020, what do? You book some Love Island influencers, right? That was maybe an example of it, you know, not going quite so well for them, because there wasn't that authenticity. They'll post on Instagram at 10 a.m. about, you know, stay home and save lives. And then by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they're around a pool in Dubai, taking selfies, drinking and living their best life. So I think you're right, Lisa. It's about understanding that the influencer is right, and you know what they're saying is reflective of how they feel and reflective of the broader audience. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting one that we could debate back and forth. But what I want to do next is come to an example of data. So who better than a head of data? So Megan, I'll hand over to you for your side.
Thank you. This is one of my absolute all-time favorite campaigns that we've done for Sheba, called Sheba 4 a.m. And the insight came from social, the execution was in social, and it's a really great data-driven piece where you can see how not only have we found that really lovely insight and that way for the brand to connect with the audience, but it's executed really perfectly along that insight as well. So that's the first thing I want to touch on. So the insight itself was that cats tend to wake up their owners, their cat parents, as we call them. If you've got a cat, you'll probably know what I'm talking about. They are natural hunters in the middle of the night. So about 4 a.m., your cat will wake you up because it wants food. Basically, it's going to wake you up and try and get you to feed it. And what we found was that a lot of these cat parents were then struggling to get back to sleep afterwards. So, of course, what do you do when you're awake in the middle of the night? You're scrolling on your phone. Some people looking for advice on how to get back to sleep. Some people just staring into the glowing rectangle, as we do. And so what we did is, I say, we executed according to the finding. We identified cat parents, we identified the places that they were, and then we put these bumpers in front of them to help them get back to sleep. And when we speak about bravery, this was a really brave piece because it was a 5-hour ad. So speaking to our brand clients and saying, we want to make an ad that's 5 hours long. But they loved it. And we did so much due diligence around it as to the science of sleep. And we put together this incredible 5-hour ad that genuinely helps people to get back to sleep. And amazing comments from people. So you've got on the screen there the industry reviews and the consumer reviews. Mark Ritson said it was his campaign of the year. So I mean, what higher praise can you go for? But the comments on the YouTube, I'm completely obsessed with. People who are literally saying the ad agency deserve a raise. Yes, we do. People talking, they're saying, like, I'm lying here with my cat, like, yeah, I'm awake at this time. And it really worked. I think there's comments saying, oh yeah, it makes me very sleepy. But the second thing that I also really want to touch on is on behalf of my brand planning colleagues as well. So I love this for the data. I'm a data person. But what we also, I think, did really well, and the reason that Mark Ritson praised it is because it really lives up to what the brand stands for. So if you go and watch, and please do, because it's really funny. We got an ASMR, very well-known person, French gentleman within the ASMR space to narrate for us, and he's got this beautiful, soft, lovely French voice. But it's got the Sheba irreverence as well, so it's funny. You know, some of the comments on the video are saying it was making me really sleepy, this lovely, gentle voice and the lovely imagery on the screen, but then it made me laugh at this point and it woke me back up again. And that is Sheba. That's what they stand for, this kind of slightly tongue-in-cheek luxury. You know, it's a premium brand, but it's still able to connect with people. It's a little irrelevant, a little wry kind of wink. So just, yeah, as they say, on behalf of my brand colleagues as well, really knowing your brand and what you stand for gives you that ability to then go deep, find those really granular insights, and then execute with that data in the right place, where people are, what are you doing that's bringing some utility to them. So yeah, this one of my favorites.
Goodness, I love it. And the more we talk about it, the more like interested I get by it. I think
go and watch the video. It's brilliant.
I'll have a look. And I think anything praised by Mark Ritson is clearly a great campaign. And surely the next one is baby formula or something for mums and dads up at the same time. I'd love to know what time that ad would be. Maybe 2 a.m, 4 a.m, 6 a.m. ads. Who knows? Awesome. Okay, and I love that it's data driven. Obviously, part of the data that we all pull in when we're looking at the media landscape is social. So, Lisa, I'd love to understand how, to what extent you think social is crucial to this idea of customer centricity and building brand.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it goes without saying that our interactions with brands are becoming richer, and that social really is sitting at the heart of the customer experience. It's no longer, one touch point or something that just lives in the marketing department. We're really starting to see social breed out of the marketing department across the entire organization. And with our annual trend survey last year, we surveyed over 18,000 marketers, and we found that marketers who can actually prove ROI in social are the ones that are leveraging social deeper in their org. So, it can't be the intern's job to be the content creator and the content scheduler and the one who's, going to IT to report, all the customer queries coming through. You really have to think about all of the touch points and ensuring that you're delighting customers throughout every single one of them, whether it's social marketing. There's a rise in social commerce. It's not going away, this trend of people buying and shopping, and as the platforms are getting more sophisticated around that, and that's only going to lead to an increased demand and being able to provide a really strong care experience through social. And that's not necessarily the marketing team's job or your social media manager's job anymore. It's really about thinking about how your customer care team and your social team are working together to create a great experience. And ultimately, that's going to breed loyalty, right? That's going to breed the advocacy that you want. And if you get all of that right, I mean, let's fingers crossed, next time we're doing this survey, you're up on the list, you are a loyal brand. So that's our aim here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Right. We're getting some questions coming in, so I'm really keen that we have some time to speak about those. But first, I think this next slide will tackle some of the questions that we are getting. Talkwalker and Hootsuite work together to build this brand love report. I would love, do join the conversation with hashtag brand love if you've got any additional questions after this. But let's talk around our top tips. Lisa, do you want to kick us off?
Absolutely. The first four really speak to Hootsuite and our perspective on social. And I guess our first tip is to tug at the heartstrings, choose the best social channel for your objectives. We talked about this earlier, that you don't necessarily need to be everywhere. You just need to be where your audience is. So our data tells us that 7 in 10 Facebook users say they use the platform to connect with friends and family. While on TikTok, I'm just looking for my stat here, 77% of users are going there for entertainment and funny videos and things like that. When you think about your content strategy, you can't really take a one-to-all approach. You really have to think of, is my audience here? What are their expectations for being here? And how can I join their conversation rather than disrupt it with my content? Secondly, love is serious business. Don't count B2B out. This is one that I'm very passionate about as a B2B marketer. And that's because B2B doesn't have to be boring. Anyone who puts B2B in a box and says, you guys have to just go and wear a suit and not have fun, that's not a brand I want to work with, because there's so much opportunity out there for B2B marketers. 38% of B2B decision makers say they discover new products about their work via social. And I admit I do the same. If you use creative techniques, if you treat the buyer as a human, there's no reason why you can't be just as courageous as you would be with a B2C brand. Our third tip about love is built on trust. Let go of your brand a bit and embrace UGC. Another thing we mentioned. So UGC stands for user-generated content. And this is about telling the brand police to calm down a little bit, because you can actually lean into your community to fill some of your content gaps. Sometimes they can say it better than you can say it yourself, because I think the key word we've been using today is authenticity, and that's actually going to come from your users. And then the fourth piece is around sharing that love. Start thinking about social as more than just a marketing tool. That's pretty much what we covered on my last slide. But I think if you can really start to expand your thinking around how you're using social in your org, you really will start to connect the dots along that customer journey and see more brand love come out of it. So.
Thank you. And I think the last two probably talk more to Talkwalker. Customer centricity, if you've not heard me say that already, focus on it. Find ways to get closer to your customers, understand who they are, where they hang out. Let's not just break down consumers by demographic, but let's break them down by the things that matter to them, how they feel, and so on and so forth. And of course, and I would say this, keep monitoring your brand love. Use conversation intelligence, monitor customer satisfaction, bring together not just your first party data, but third party data, social data, online news, broadcast. Get a full picture of where your consumers are in terms of their relationship with your brand, and focus in on the things that you can be doing to drive that forward. So those are our top tips. What I want to do now, there's nothing worse than being on a webinar and being sent a massive link of how you download this webinar. Feel free now to grab your phone and scan the QR code, and you'll be able to download the report for free. As I've said, it gathers insights from the world's 50 most loved brands from different industries. I know that we've had I've had messages coming in about specific verticals. Download the report and find out more. And feel free to tweet about it using hashtag brand love as well. Right, we've got about 5 minutes left. So questions, we've had an awful lot coming in. So let's go to this one. Lisa, I'm going to pass this one to you. What advice would you give to brands looking to start their own brand love initiatives? Is there a difference between B2B and B2C approaches?
Well, Jack, I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head with those last two Talkwalker tips. It's really about, and the very first slide when we kick this off, it's about understanding your customers inside and out. So do the research, listen on social, make sure that you're not just asking, what do you expect from my brand, but why? do you expect it? If you're actually getting to the why, that's when you're really going to get to the root of how you can create these memorable experiences. We touched on the B2B and B2C thing. What I'd say is go look up the B2B brands that are doing cool stuff, that are actually testing it out. You've got Adobe and Shopify and Canva, but you also have like fintech brands that you wouldn't expect out there doing cool stuff like BlackRock. So there are brands doing it. Definitely take a look, some inspiration, and then get a little crazy. We already said it. It's okay if you fail, as long as you try and you think it's going to resonate with what your audience expects.
I love that. I love that. We've got a few things coming in around feeling. So how do you understand, Megan, how consumers are feeling and how we're driving consumer feeling? Can you explain how, as a data-driven practitioner, how you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I'm a really big fan of is what I call the multi-dimensional picture from data. So I always make sure that I have a toolkit that includes a license with a platform that covers a different type of data, because what people say in one channel or one forum is different than what they may say elsewhere, or the way that they behave in reality. So it's really important when you're trying to understand how they feel and what they need from you, where you can meet some of those objectives, particularly, as Lisa says, around that whole loop. Pick up as many different tools as you can, overlay the findings together. The second piece then is slightly objective, but there's work that you can do with your data science team to make it more objective, is then categorizing those findings according to, does it look like somebody is frustrated? Does it look like they are not being represented properly? What does that language mean? And try and categorize it to really pick it apart. I think it also connects a little bit to that B2B conversation there as well, that again, when you're trying to get your consumers to connect and love your brand, the love piece is the end output that you get to. But if you really dig into what are their frustrations, what are their challenges, where do they feel reflected well, like that's where you're going to find that that substance to build the brand on and execute your campaigns off the back of it.
Yeah, we've spoken about that before, haven't we? About not starting with brand love in mind. If you do that, inevitably you're not going to get there. But I guess that's where the methodology comes in handy, right? Work out whether it's B2B or B2C, how do you build trust with your customers? How do you get them to feel passionate about your brand or your product, and how do you get them to trust you and be satisfied as well? A question that I like the look of here. Oh my goodness, we're really running out of time. How important do you think it is for brands to be camera facing, or having the staff or the founder featured in content or social content? That's a question inspired by Thomas. Lisa, have you got thoughts on that from a social perspective?
I don't know if I can say how important it is, but what I can say is there's a huge opportunity there. If your founder has a story to tell, that is a whole content pillar in itself that you can leverage. They would have created your brand for a reason, where they actually, wanted to solve a problem. And there's likely a lot of content you can create about bringing that founder to life. Dave Gerhardt has a great book out called, Founder Brand, that talks all about how he leverages founders for podcasts and how that's a whole pillar in their marketing strategy. So I wouldn't overlook it. I think the biggest hump is getting the founder, or maybe sometimes that senior person, to be comfortable with being a presence. So I think that's the piece that might take a little bit of coaching.
Perfect, thank you. Right, we are 1 minute past 12, and I promised this would end at 12. So I'm going to end with one. Well, I always like to end with a fun question. So to our panelists, it's up to you who jumps in first. What is your most loved brand? It doesn't have to be on that top 10. Who do you love?
I'll go, because I cannot help myself when this question comes up. I love Spotify. I love them so much. I'm a massive music fan, but from a data perspective as well, I am a data geek, and they do excellent things with their data. They do brilliant insight. They use that insight to personalize their work, their above the line, their individual experience with the app or online, or the year in review. Like I just love the experience that they give, and it's all music based, which is my passion.
Amazing. And they do so well at getting their customers engaged and talking about them as well, which I love.
Yeah.
Lisa, your favorite brand in the world, who is it?
This is so difficult, and having given this like a thought while Megan's talking, I'm going to go with a brand called Naked Wines. And, despite maybe them going a little bit downturn after the pandemic peak of the sales, I just think they do an excellent job, to your point, Megan, on personalization. They have an excellent customer service policy where, if you don't like your wine, you can get it refunded. I've been on the phone with people on Christmas Eve, like trying to make magic happen so I can have my Christmas wine. And then on top of it, there's always a free bottle in my basket. So the loyalty they've created as a brand, and of course, you have to be a wine lover to want to love a brand like that. I just, I can't shout enough about it.
Free wine. I think I need to change my choice.
The other piece I forgot to mention on that is the most important piece is that they only support small growers. So they're mission based. It's not just about mass consumption. It's about knowing that you're giving back. There's this concept of being an angel. So that, on top of the first points I mentioned, is really the full circle for me.
Amazing. And then I guess I can't put you on the spot without giving you mine. Goodness, this might change brand love towards Talkwalker, but I'm going to tell everyone I'm a massive Tottenham Hotspur fan. And although it's a football club, I think they've done really well at driving it commercially and building experiences. They've got the sort of height walking stuff. They've got bars which are experiential and that you stay at the stadium. So yes, I love that. Okay, I'm really sorry, we're 5 minutes late, so we're going to have to end there. In terms of where you can get more stuff from us, please do use the hashtag brand love. You'll be able to find us all hanging out there. Head and connect with us on LinkedIn. But most importantly, from my perspective, certainly to get the report, to learn more about what we've been talking about, do download it here. I'll keep the screen up for a couple of seconds, but we'll drop off now. Thank you very much for joining. Thank you to our fantastic panelists from AMV BBDO and from Hootsuite. We'll see you very soon. Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye.